Chapter 1898. As that person spoke, he moved closer to Fengjiu and sniffed, but before he could get close, Fengjiu ordered him to retreat. Stand still. Fengjiu glanced at him and said, "What do you think you look like? Once we enter the city, we can have as much wine as we want. Do you think we can forget about you?" "Heh, that's true." He smiled embarrassedly and rubbed his head. Thinking that he was finally free after being locked up for so many months, his mood was unusually good. They chatted and laughed along the way. After entering the city, they all followed Fengjiu's side in an orderly manner. They bought almost all the suitable clothes in the city's clothing stores and ordered 2 roast pigs and some spiced beef from the restaurant. Then they went to the wine shop and bought more than 10 large jars of wine. They put everything into everyone's Cosmos bags and walked around the city before going back to the restaurant to get the roast pig. As the sky gradually darkened, several bonfires were lit in the small forest. Everyone sat around them and chatted until they saw Fengjiu and the others return. They quickly went up to greet them. "Captain, you're back. We're back. We've bought everything. Everyone, take out the food and eat together," Fengjiu said, and let them take out the things in their Cosmos bags. Seeing the wine and meat, everyone laughed. One of them said, "I knew we'd have to drink later. Look, these freshly cut bamboo tubes come in handy." As they spoke, everyone smiled and took out the bamboo tubes they had previously cut. Some set up the roast pigs, some helped everyone get the wine, and some shared the spiced beef. "Captain, when everyone is here, what should we do next?" someone asked. "When everyone is here, I don't know about anything else, but how about we take down the trove of treasures pavilion first?" Fengjiu smiled and looked at everyone, saying, "That's where the Temple of Darkness amasses their wealth. There should be a lot of treasures there." And back then, she had been captured by the people there and sent to the training camp. No matter what, she had to go back and greet them. Otherwise, it would be too unkind. "All right. We'll listen to Captain," everyone said in a clear voice. As the night gradually darkened, Fengjiu found a tree to rest in. The others sat around and chatted. Some walked around and paid attention to the surroundings. The night was relatively peaceful until the sky gradually darkened. When it was close to midnight, a few women's cries for help suddenly rang out in the night. "Help! Help!" That voice didn't sound far, as if it was not far from the forest. Thus, Fengjiu jumped down and led a dozen people and followed the voice. "What are you shouting for? Everyone here are our people. Even if you shout, no one will come." "That's right. Looking at you guys, you should know that female rogue cultivators have to rely on powerful male cultivators to survive. Otherwise, they could meet with misfortune at any time. However, it's different if you follow us. We're fairy realm cultivators, and we're much stronger than you guys." The 2 people who spoke were the 2 fairy realm cultivators under Fengjiu. Because they were drunk, their eyes were blurred and filled with lust. They hugged the 2 female loose cultivators and moved their hands up and down. At the same time, they moved forward to kiss the woman's red lips. Chapter 1899. "Ah, don't." The female cultivator cried out in alarm, her face pale with fright. Female cultivators were most afraid of encountering such a situation. Because of this, when they walked outside, they would try not to sleep outside. But tonight, when they arrived at Floating Cloud City, the city gates were already closed and they couldn't enter, so they decided to spend the night in this small forest. Who would have thought that they would run into these 2 drunkards who came out of nowhere, their bodies reeking of alcohol? Moreover, what made them despair the most was that these 2 cultivators had the strength of the fairy realm. These 2 gold core cultivators had no power to resist at all. Could it be that tonight they would really be defiled by these 2 people? Unwilling to give up, the 2 of them bit down on each other's hands as their hands were being captured. "Ah, stinky woman!" One of the fairy realm cultivators cried out in pain, and at the same time, he slapped her. "Pa! You dare to bite me! I'll kill you!" Immediately after, a flurry of punches and kicks followed. Fengjiu and the others were standing not far away and saw this scene. They also clearly heard the words of the two people. She stared at the two people with a frosty expression. Lei Xiao and Su San saw this and saw Fengjiu's cold expression, so they quickly shouted to the shocked people behind them, "Why haven't you come forward and detained these two people?" Yes. The dozen or so people behind them suddenly came back to their senses. As they quickly stepped forward, they secretly glanced at Fengjiu, who was dressed in black, and quickly stepped forward, holding the two people's hands behind their backs and forcing them to kneel on the ground. Who dares to touch me?" The two people cursed, then suddenly raised their heads. When they recognized their brothers, they were startled, but then they smiled and said, "So it's you. Why are you also here? Quickly let us go, there are two female loose cultivators over there. It's a good opportunity to reward our brothers." When the people holding the two people heard this, their faces darkened. Originally, they didn't use much strength, but when they heard this, they increased their strength and said, "Shut up! Don't talk nonsense." At this moment, they didn't even dare to raise their heads to look at their captain. They didn't even need to look to know how ugly their captain's expression was. The two female cultivators fell to the ground. Seeing the two people being restrained by the masked men, their eyes were still filled with shock. They looked at the green-clothed youth standing there with a frosty expression, and their hearts inexplicably settled. Perhaps feeling that the atmosphere was not right, the two of them looked back. When they saw the green figure standing not far away, they laughed and said, "So it's Captain. Captain is also here. Could it be that you've also taken a fancy to those two beauties? Take him back." Fengjiu did not walk over. Instead, he turned around and walked back. They escorted the two men back and brought the two women to the bonfire. When they arrived at the bonfire, the two women were startled when they saw the masked men around the bonfire. There were actually so many black-clothed men here? Could he be from some organization? They tried to distinguish their origins from their clothes, but they saw that their sleeves were torn, so they couldn't tell where they came from. "Captain, what's going on?" Chapter 1900. Ah, what are you doing? The two of them roared angrily and glared fiercely at Fengjiu, who was standing in front of them with a cold expression. "Who do you think you are? What right do you have to treat us like this?" Fengjiu looked at them coldly but did not speak to them. Instead, she looked at the crowd around her and said, "Back then, I gave you a chance to leave, but you chose to stay. I also told you about my rules. If you break my rules, I will not let you off easily." Her voice was neither fast nor slow. However, when the crowd heard her, they felt a cold aura sweep across their hearts. The murderous intent that could not be ignored was also clear, causing them to tremble in fear. "Leader, we will never dare to forget your words. From the moment we decided to follow you, we are your people." The crowd's voices were clear and solemn. At this moment, the two people who were forced to kneel on the ground were slightly startled, as if they had thought of something. They lowered their heads for a moment, but in the next moment they raised their heads again, their eyes filled with hatred. "We said that we would follow you. So what? You're just toying with two women. Is it that serious? You're the weakest among us. You're only at the peak of the nascent soul stage. What right do you have to control us, fairy realm powerhouses?" When the crowd heard this, they frowned under their mask. Are these two people trying to court death? Let them go, Fengjiu said to the cultivators who were holding the two people captive. As soon as she finished speaking, the cultivators who were holding the two people released their hands and retreated to the side. When the two people regained their freedom and stood up, they saw a green figure flashing in front of them and waving a fist towards them. The two of them looked at each other and gritted their teeth. They wanted to teach him a lesson, so that he would not think that they, as fairy realm powerhouses, had to listen to him. However, even if the two of them joined forces, their speed and strength were too weak. They could not be compared to Fengjiu at all. When she waved her fist, It hit one of the fairy realm powerhouses. Bang! Crack! A heavy punch landed, and the sound of his sternum breaking could be heard. The fairy realm cultivator cried out in pain, and his entire body bent over. When he spat out a mouthful of blood, Whoosh! Bang! Crack! Hiss! Feng Jiu raised her foot and kicked the other man's leg. That man gasped and fell to his knees. Feng Jiu raised her foot and kicked, breaking the other man's leg. Everyone's eyes flickered as they watched. They already knew that their captain was very powerful. This time, when they saw him fight, the speed and strength of his attacks made them very suspicious. Was he really just a nascent soul cultivator? That day, they had left early and did not see the battle between him and the people from the Temple of Darkness. All this time, they had not been able to figure out his cultivation level, but they were sure that his strength was definitely not at the peak of the nascent soul realm. Bang! Ah! The two figures were kicked high into the air. After hitting the branches above, they fell heavily to the ground. They lay on the ground and groaned, unable to get up for a long time. Chapter 1901. Are cultivators of the fairy realm considered powerful? Feng Jiu looked at the two men lying on the ground and asked, "You're already so proud with your current strength? Are you allowed to do evil now? Are you allowed to be arrogant now?" She interrogated them again and again, causing the two men to be speechless. She did not know if they were speechless from shame or because they were beaten to the point that they could not speak. They only knew that they were lying on the ground with their heads lowered, their bodies twitching slightly. Feng Jiu stared at the two men, then looked away indifferently. His voice was cold as he said, "Lei Xiao, kill them." When he said this, the two men on the ground were finally shocked. They raised their heads abruptly, their eyes filled with panic. At this moment, they knew that their captain was serious. "Captain, no, Captain, don't kill us." When Lei Xiao heard Feng Jiu's words, he did not hesitate at all. He strode forward to the two men and grabbed their throats with one hand and supported their heads with the other. In the next moment, he twisted his hand forcefully. Crack! With a crack, the man did not even have the chance to scream before he died. The other man was the same. He did not even have time to beg for mercy before he died in Lei Xiao's hands. When the surrounding people saw this scene, they were all silent. They felt that it was only natural. At the same time, they were alarmed. The fate of these two men would always remind them of the consequences of breaking the rules. Feng Jiu turned around and looked at the crowd. "I hope that all of you will remember what happened today, and remember what you should not do. If you break my rules, you will be punished no matter how far away you are. Yes, Captain, don't worry. We will not let you down," the crowd said in unison. Feng Jiu nodded and looked at the two women beside him. He then said, "You can rest here for the night and leave tomorrow morning." "Thank you, young master." The two women bowed. They did not dare to be disrespectful to this young man in green. Pai San led his men to bury the two men. That night, after such a thing happened, no one could sleep. When the sky brightened, the city gates opened. The two women expressed their thanks and left. Feng Jiu and the others were still waiting in the forest for the last group to return. However, when the sun rose, what they were waiting for was not the group of 20 people, but a heavily injured cultivator covered in blood. When the people outside the forest saw the man, they quickly helped him into the forest and asked, "Why are you the only one here? What about the others? Did something happen? Where's the captain? Quick, quick, take me to see the captain." The man panted as he spoke, one hand covering the wound on his abdomen that was still bleeding. Two men in black helped him in and came to Feng Jiu. "Captain, something happened. Look." Feng Jiu quickly walked in front of that person. Seeing that he was seriously injured, he couldn't help but frown and ask, "What happened? Who hurt you?" Captain, our team was ambushed yesterday. A team of people was trapped in that damned forest. Furthermore, there were demonic cultivators inside. My brothers risked their lives so that I could escape and report the news. Captain, please, quickly go and save them." After saying this, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. Chapter 1902. Ghost Forest. Fengjiu softly muttered the name when he heard a voice from the side. "Captain, I know that place," Su San said, then looked at Fengjiu and said, "The Ghost Forest isn't far from here. It's a forest north of Floating Cloud City. It's gloomy all year round and is said to be one of the nests of devil cultivators. Most importantly, there's a spirit array in that place. Even people who have a little understanding of spirit arrays will be trapped inside. Leave 2 people behind to take care of him," Fengjiu said, then looked at the person bandaging his wounds under a tree, then said to Su San, "Since you know that place, you take them there. Don't enter the forest, just wait outside for my orders. I'll go and see what's going on first." "Captain wants to go alone? How can that be?" Several of them said in unison. "No matter what, you should at least take a few people with you. It's too dangerous to go alone. They can injure a flying immortal realm cultivator like this. It can be seen that the strength of those devil cultivators isn't low. It's too dangerous to go alone. If you fall into their hands, I'm afraid. I have my own plans, you don't have to worry." After saying that, she gave them a few more instructions, then took out the Aurora transmission scroll. Seeing that the Ghost Forest was also on it, she poured her spiritual qi into it, then it turned into a ray of light and streaked across the sky. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw this scene. What kind of treasure was that? How could it disappear in an instant? That wasn't an ordinary transmission scroll, right? They didn't think too much about it and quickly got ready to set off. "You 2 stay behind to take care of him and wait for us to come back," Su San said to the 2 people who were bandaging the injured man. "Okay, then you 2 be careful and go quickly. Don't let Captain wait for too long." The 2 said, "Understood," Su San replied, then looked at Lei Xiao. After the 2 nodded, they quickly led their people away on their flying sword. On the other side, in the Ghost Forest north of Floating Cloud City, Fengjiu suddenly appeared in the forest. As soon as he appeared, he felt a gloomy aura and a faint smell of blood permeating the air. From the faint smell of blood, he could tell that many people had died in this forest. Ordinary cultivators wouldn't come to a place like this. The only ones who could stand in this place were probably those evil things and devil cultivators. She didn't know where to start in such a large forest. Thus, she stood there quietly and closed her eyes. At the same time, she released her divine sense. After a while, she found the location of number 1 and the others. She took a deep breath and walked towards that place. After walking for a while, she saw that the surrounding trees began to move. One by one, they moved, making it difficult for her to tell the direction. Petty tricks. Fengjiu snorted and waved his hand. A flame shot out and turned into a fire snake that coiled around the trees. The flame burned along the tree trunks. Not long after, the moving things were burned to ashes. Chapter 1903. I'm afraid we can't get out. Those demonic cultivators are deliberately trying to exhaust us to death. They don't even need to do anything here. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for us to survive. A man in black said as he sat up and looked at the endless desert in front of him. He sighed softly. I didn't expect this illusion array to be so powerful. This is the first time I've encountered such an illusion array. I'm afraid that even the captain can't enter this place and save us. Hearing this, number 1 stood up and said to everyone, we can't just sit here and wait for death. We've rested for a while. Everyone, get up. We'll definitely find where the life gate is. But none of us are proficient in formations. Have you forgotten that we accidentally barged into a few death gates and got ourselves injured? We almost died here? Furthermore, the direction in here keeps changing. We originally had no way to find it. So what? It's better than waiting for death here, right? Hearing this, everyone fell silent for a moment. Then, one by one, they stood up. Alright. Let's search. Even if we die from an attack, it's better than waiting for death here. Thus, everyone once again searched for the life gate. They walked in this illusion array and groped around. Every step they took was very careful. The scenery in front of them also changed according to the changes in the illusion array. The wind and sand flew, and the sun shone brightly, making it difficult for them to move. Look, there's a rock over there, a man in black said as he pointed at a large rock not far away. In this illusion array, anything could be the key to breaking the illusion array. Let's go take a look. As everyone spoke, they quickly walked forward. When they arrived, they surrounded the rock and looked at it. Then, they discussed, let's move it and take a look. If it's not the life gate, I'm afraid it'll be dangerous again. Alright, let's move it. As everyone spoke, one of them went forward to move the rock. The moment the rock moved, a dark and eerie hole suddenly appeared under their feet. The people standing there were caught off guard and fell into it. When number 1 saw the sharp blades pointing upwards, he couldn't help but be shocked. He quickly took out a magic tool and threw it downward. Just as the magic tool became bigger, the people above also fell down one after another. They all fell onto the magic tool. Everyone cried out in alarm and came back to their senses. A sense of lingering fear emerged in their hearts. We really made a trip to the gates of death. If it wasn't for number 1's magic tool, I'm afraid we would have all been turned into hedgehogs. However, at this moment, the sound of a metal object colliding was heard. Everyone raised their heads to look and saw that the cave entrance was covered by a black iron cover. At the same time, loud laughter was heard. Look, these bastards jumped into the hole one by one. Didn't I tell you? We don't even need to do anything to deal with them. Ha ha ha, that's right. However, these people have fallen into our hands. No matter what, we have to play with them. How do you want to play? More than 10 demonic cultivators surrounded them and stared at the people in the hole. They laughed sinisterly and proudly. Why don't we pour some oil on them and burn them to death? Or would it be better to pour some water down here and watch them drown? When number 1 heard this, he looked around and said, I'll go up on my flying magic tool. You guys try to cut open that black iron cover or push it away. Chapter 1904. Ha ha? You want to come up? Let's see if you have the ability. Laughter could be heard from above. Then, some oil was poured into the cave. The oil splashed down and landed on their bodies. It was a little pungent. Then, a few balls of fire flew in. Without needing to speak, the people inside worked together to extinguish the flames. However, no matter how fast they extinguished the flames, there were still tongues of fire that reached the oil. In an instant, the oil was set ablaze. Ah! One of them was on fire. The scorching heat made him cry out in surprise. The people beside him quickly shouted, Take off your clothes. Seeing the people below on fire, the devil cultivators above laughed loudly. Look at them. How interesting. Just as they finished laughing, a cold voice suddenly came from behind them. Is it very interesting? Why don't you go down and try? When the voice suddenly came out, the devil cultivators above were shocked. They quickly turned around and saw a green figure rushing up. Before they could even see his face clearly, one of them had a cut on his throat. Blood spurted out and he fell to the ground, twitching. Damn it! Where did this brat come from? Kill him! Another person cursed angrily and attacked with his sword. However, before he could get close, he was sent flying with a kick. Feng Jiu took out her Qinfeng sword when she saw the iron barrier that covered the entrance of the cave. A sharp sword qi shot out with a swish, and a green streak of light flew out. With a swish, the iron barrier was sliced into two. She walked forward and saw that the people below were looking up. When they saw that it was her, their faces were filled with surprise. Captain! At this moment, everyone's hearts were filled with excitement. They had never thought that their captain would come so quickly. Moreover, it was when their lives were hanging by a thread. Their hearts, which had originally given up all hope, could not help but be pleasantly surprised, excited, and shocked when they saw that handsome face. "Come up quickly." As Fengjiu spoke, she turned around and glanced at the devil cultivators holding long swords. She saw that they were also at the fairy realm. The only difference was that there were more devil cultivators who were at their peak. Furthermore, to be able to set up such an exquisite formation in this forest, it seemed that there were people who were extremely proficient in formations. The ancient divine sword, Qingfeng sword? The devil cultivators were also knowledgeable. At this moment, they saw that the black iron shield was easily cut open by the sword in the green-robed youth's hand. They also saw that the sword was emitting a green light. How could they not know that it was the ancient divine sword, Qingfeng sword? Kill him. Take his life and hand it over to the demon's supremacy. We will definitely reward you. One of them shouted. His eyes were filled with greed. Such an ancient divine sword should fall into their hands. He believed that as long as they handed over this sword, they would definitely receive great benefits. You want my Qingfeng sword? That will depend on your abilities. Fengjiu's lips curled into a cold smile. She turned the Qingfeng sword in her hand and green sword flowers shot out towards the devil cultivators. The green sword flowers were like green bamboo leaves at this moment, sharp and terrifying. Every sword flower carried the power of a peak fairy sage and killing intent. They were as fast as the speed of light. Ah! Hiss! Damn it! He's actually a fairy sage expert. Chapter 1905. The demon cultivators who were trying to escape felt as if there was a huge mountain pressing down on their heads, causing them to be unable to breathe properly. Their blood and qi surged within their bodies. Then, their legs gave way and they fell to the ground, unable to stand up. They groaned and tried to break free from the pressure and stand up. However, before the pressure from the peak of the celestial sage realm could be lifted, they felt as if they were being pressed down by an invisible mountain, unable to move. When number 1 and the others escaped from below, they saw that the dozen or so devil cultivators had all fallen to the ground. Moreover, there was a powerful airflow surging in the air. None of them could stand up, and some of them even spat out blood. Immediately after, they saw the green sword in the captain's hand turn, and a cold light shot out. With a swoosh, those people were cut in half. Mournful screams rang out in the forest, as if they had broken through the sky. They were extremely sharp and ear-piercing. As more than a dozen people died, the smell of blood in the air became extremely thick, causing people to have a nauseating feeling. When number 1 and the rest saw this scene, they were shocked. Their hearts skipped a beat as they looked at the young man who was standing at the side with a calm expression. They could only feel a wave of shock in their hearts. Although they knew that their captain was extremely outstanding, it was only at this moment that they found out that he was actually at the peak of the celestial saint realm. Moreover, he even had the ancient divine sword, Qingfeng, in his hand, which allowed him to easily kill more than a dozen fairy realm experts. Such shocking power and such clean and efficient methods really shocked them. Take their things and look through them. See if there are any books on formations among them, Fengjiu said as he looked at the group of people who were in a sorry state. Yes. Everyone came back to their senses and hurriedly went forward to take the cosmos bags and interspatial rings from the devil cultivators. They rummaged through them and finally found a worn-out ancient book on formations in one of the devil cultivators' interspatial rings. Captain, there really is one. One of the black-robed men handed the ancient book on formations to Fengjiu. Fengjiu glanced at it and took it. Then, he said to them, "You can divide the other things among yourselves. Also, treat your wounds and follow me out." "Yes. Thank you, Captain." Everyone agreed and thanked him happily. After all, these demonic cultivators had a lot of things on them. After their wounds were bandaged, Fengjiu passed them some water and let them drink a few mouthfuls before leading them out of the forest. Following behind Fengjiu, everyone's gazes were filled with curiosity. They watched as their captain casually walked through the formations like it was his own backyard. He easily avoided the formations and led them out of the forest. They couldn't help but feel curious. What was the origin of the captain? Did he sneak into the Temple of Darkness himself? With such strength and ability, it could be seen that his background was definitely not low. Lei Xiao, Su San, and the others hurriedly arrived outside the ghost forest. They kept looking around, wondering if they should go in and take a look. Then, they saw familiar figures walking out. "Look, they're out!" someone shouted in surprise. Chapter 1906. "I'm fine," Fengjiu said and looked at number 1 and the others. "Give them something to eat." "Okay." Lei Xiao and the others responded and handed them water and meat. "Eat some to replenish your strength." "How are your injuries? Do you need to bandage them again?" "No need, they're just minor injuries." They shook their heads and took the water and meat to eat. "Captain, is number 37 okay?" Number 1 asked. He was asking about the person who escaped to ask for help. "He's seriously injured and ran back to report. He fainted after saying that, but don't worry, 2 people stayed behind to take care of him," Fengjiu said and sat down. He took out the ancient book on formations and flipped through it. He roughly looked at the formations in it and put it away. He was going to give this book to Du Fan and let him study it. He believed that it could improve his formation skills again. After the group rested for a while, they went back again. About 2 hours later, they returned to the small forest and met up with the other 3. After everyone had arrived, Fengjiu changed the injured people into normal clothes and asked them to go to the Trove of Treasures building to find a courtyard to stay in and heal their injuries first. The other team went directly to the Trove of Treasures building to inquire about the good news and wait for orders before taking action. She used the Aurora transportation scroll to go back to Elder Tan's place to take a look. Therefore, in the evening, when the sky was getting dark, Fengjiu entered the town and went to the market. She bought 2 caddies of spiced beef and a jar of wine and went to Elder Tan's courtyard. When she arrived at the courtyard, there was no one inside. Therefore, she put the things on the table and found 2 wine bowls. When she was done, she saw Elder Tan push the door open and come in. When he saw Fengjiu sitting in the courtyard, he was stunned. "Grandpa Tan, you're here? I bought spiced beef and wine. Come and try it." Fengjiu smiled and sat down at the table. At the same time, she poured wine into the wine bowl. Elder Tan, who came back to his senses, was stunned. He put down the things and walked forward. After sitting down at the table, he stared at Fengjiu. "You're okay? How did you get out?" He could still get out after entering that place? It was not simple. "I already said that I'll be fine." Fengjiu squinted her eyes and said, "I left after I was done there. By the way, I brought out all the people who were caught with me and destroyed their territory." Elder Tan was speechless when he heard this. He stared at him speechlessly. "Come, let's not talk about that. Try this wine." She gestured and took a sip. Elder Tan calmed down and picked up his wine to suppress his shock. Regardless of whether it was true or not, to be able to sit here and say these words, it seemed that there should be some truth to it. However, this side had not received such news yet. The people from the Endless Treasures Pavilion probably didn't know about it yet, right? Since you left, why did you still come back here? What else do you want to do? He couldn't be thinking of making a move against the Endless Treasures Pavilion, right? When this thought appeared, Elder Tan was shocked. Hee, didn't I want to come back to see you so that you won't keep worrying? Besides, I still have some things to deal with here, so I came back. After I'm done, I'll be leaving. I don't think we'll have a chance to see each other again. Chapter 1907. Elder Tan drank another mouthful of wine to suppress his shock as he sized up the youth in front of him. Even he couldn't tell his cultivation level, so just how strong was he? To be able to come out of that place alive, it was obvious that he wasn't an ordinary person. He really didn't think that he would have misjudged him. When he first saw him, he thought that this youth looked simple and honest, so he helped him. Now that he thought about it, if he hadn't brought him in, he probably would have had the ability to go in by himself, right? The two of them drank wine and ate meat in the courtyard, but didn't chat much. When the sky darkened, she said to Elder Tan, "I'm leaving. I'm going out for a stroll." She wanted to go out and gather information and wait for the next move. Elder Tan looked at her and only nodded, saying, "Be careful." Then he turned and went into the room. Fengjiu smiled, then stepped out of the courtyard, closing the door behind her, and walked into the night market. At this moment, in another part of the Temple of Dark Night, a masked man held a portrait in his hand and looked at it. When he saw the beautiful woman in the portrait, he narrowed his eyes and murmured in a low voice, "Is this your true appearance, Fengjiu? You really are peerless and unparalleled in your generation. I really didn't think that I would be defeated by a woman one day." He looked at the woman's crafty and clear eyes in the portrait, as if she was mocking him. He tugged at the corner of his mouth, revealing a smile. His finger brushed across the woman's face in the portrait, brushing past the confidence between the beautiful woman's brows, then landing on the slightly raised corners of her lips, revealing a demonic smile. "You're indeed extraordinary, extraordinary. Tell me, how should I repay you?" He murmured softly, his deep eyes seeming to be deep in thought, thinking of a way to deal with her. On the other side, Xianyuan Mose stood in a courtyard with his hands behind his back. He looked at the horizon, his brows slightly furrowed. He hadn't heard from Fengjiu for so long. Where did she go? Calculating the time, he had already been here for quite some time. He had also asked his subordinates to inquire about her whereabouts, but they were still fruitless. Even Murong Yixian, who had brought her over, didn't know where she had gone. At this moment, Hui Lang ran in excitedly. "Master, master! There's news about the ghost doctor." Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose immediately turned his head, and a light flashed across his deep eyes. "She appeared? Where is it?" In his tone, there was an eagerness and joy that even he himself did not notice. The ghost doctor should have snuck into the Temple of Dark Night. The latest news is that the Temple of Dark Night's headquarters has been turned upside down. Moreover, there are many large craters caused by the explosion of fire cylinders at the scene. There are countless casualties and it's a complete mess, Hui Lang said excitedly. His eyes were filled with admiration. "I knew that the ghost doctor was very powerful. There hasn't been any news for such a long time. Once there's news, it's earth-shattering. This news hasn't spread yet. It's only because our people over there noticed it that they investigated it and reported it back. Speak clearly. How is she? Where is she now?" Xianyuan Mose said with his hands behind his back. Compared to anything else, he was more worried about her safety. Chapter 1908. At this point, Hui Lang was incomparably excited. How could he not have a part in such a thing? It was a pity that he was not by the ghost doctor's side. Otherwise, he would have been able to display his skills. When Xianyuan Mose heard this, his expression softened. After causing such a ruckus there, she probably won't stay in that area anymore. Tell the subordinates to pay more attention and see if there are any unusual movements recently. Yes. Hui Lang replied, then turned to leave. When he walked out, he saw Emo Chen dressed in white. He could not help but stop in his tracks. "Gongzi Emo Chen? Why are you here?" He had always been at odds with his master. Why was he here again? "I had nothing to do, so I came to find your master to play chess." Emo Chen smiled warmly. His footsteps paused for a moment, then he looked inside. "Your master is here, right?" "Yes, why don't I go in and report?" Hui Lang asked. No need. Since he's inside, he definitely knows that I'm here. You can go about your business. He waved his hand and smiled warmly, then walked inside. Hui Lang rubbed his nose and muttered to himself, then walked outside. When Emo Chen arrived inside, Xianyuan Mose was sitting at the table in the courtyard. He placed 2 cups on the table and poured wine into them. Seeing this, Emo Chen smiled. It's rare that you'll pour wine for me when I come here. How rare. He lifted his robe and sat down opposite him. He lifted the cup and sniffed lightly. The fragrance of the wine entered his nose. If you have something to say, say it. I don't have time to chat with you, Xianyuan Mose said, then lifted the cup and took a sip. Hearing this, Emo Chen said, It seems that you've also received the news about Ajio. If there are no accidents, she will be back soon. Xianyuan Mose glanced at him and did not say anything. But when he saw that he finished the cup of wine in 2 mouthfuls, his eyes flashed slightly. What kind of wine is this? It's very mellow and has a rich aftertaste, Emo Chen said. After downing a cup of wine, she felt like she hadn't had enough. Thus, she poured herself another cup. It's really good wine. A smile appeared on Emo Chen's face as she looked at Xianyuan Mose. How could you bear to bring out such good wine to greet me? She downed 1 cup, then drank another. Xianyuan Mose slowly tasted the wine. Before he could finish the glass in his hand, he saw that Emo Chen was already pouring the 4th glass. She saw that his face was slightly flushed and his gaze was slightly dazed. She couldn't help but smile. This is immortal drunkenness, also known as 3 cups down. Right after she finished speaking, Emo Chen's body swayed slightly, and she fell to the ground. Ing-yi. Xianyuan Mose called out. Master. In the dark, Ing-yi came out. Throw him into the brothel for me. Have someone take good care of him. Xianyuan Mose took a sip of the wine and said in a low and magnetic voice unhurriedly. Hearing this, the corner of Ing-yi's mouth twitched. He was wondering why his master would take out immortal drunken wine for young Master Emo Chen to drink. So it turned out this was his plan. He lowered his head slightly and replied, Yes. He quickly walked forward and picked Emo Chen up, bringing him to the brothel. On the other side, after Feng Jiu and Lei Xiao gathered together, they began to discuss. Chapter 1909. In addition, divide everyone into 3 teams. 1 team will attack with me, 1 team will plunder the treasures, and 1 team will keep an eye on the entire Endless Treasures Pavilion. Don't let anyone escape. Once we're done, we'll meet at the courtyard in the western part of the city. Feng Jiu said in a deep voice. Yes. Everyone replied and divided the teams into 3 teams. After assigning their respective roles, they waited for tonight's orders. As the night deepened, the people on the streets gradually became sparse. In the darkness of the night, black figures flitted across the rooftops and headed towards the Endless Treasures Pavilion. Of the 100 people, a small team was left to guard the corners outside. Another team of 2 followed Fengjiu in as the main force, while the remaining team headed towards the treasury of the Endless Treasures Pavilion. The night was tranquil, and nearly 100 Fairy Realm cultivators had surrounded the Endless Treasures Pavilion without making a sound. However, the people inside hadn't noticed anything amiss. As the main force, after Feng Jiu and the others sneaked into the Endless Treasures Pavilion, 2 or 3 of them stayed behind to deal with the people below, while the rest went upstairs. One of the guards of the Endless Treasures Pavilion had his throat slit and fell to the ground. At the same time, the other few people also took care of the guards on the first floor. After taking care of more than 20 guards in the front and back of the pavilion, the rest went up to the second floor. Perhaps it was because of the faint smell of blood in the air, but the people on the second floor sensed that something was amiss. 2 of the Fairy Realm cultivators came out to take a look, and they just happened to see a guard being killed and dragged to the front. They couldn't help but shout out, "Who is it?" As soon as the voice that contained a powerful pressure was heard, all the cultivators hidden in the Endless Treasures Pavilion rushed out. At this time, Feng Jiu and the others also appeared one after another. When the old man in the Endless Treasures Pavilion saw the green-robed youth walk out from the darkness, he could not help but be startled and exclaim, "It's you! Why are you here? Wasn't this youth sent to the training camp at that time? Why was he here? How could anyone who entered that place ever come out?" Feng Jiu's lips curled up slightly as he looked at the old man. His eyes narrowed into slits as he said, "I didn't expect you to still remember me. What an honor." She waved her hand and said to the people behind her, "Move quickly." Yes. Everyone responded and quickly rushed forward to attack the people from the Endless Treasures Pavilion. When the old man saw that all of the black-robed men were at the fairy realm, his expression changed. Damn it! He didn't want to fight, but wanted to quickly escape from here. He turned around and wanted to escape from the back, but he didn't expect to see those men in black standing guard behind him. "Today, none of you will be able to escape." Feng Jiu narrowed his eyes as he spoke. He didn't make a move. Instead, he leaned against the pillar and looked at the panicking people. "What's going on? What happened?" A few old men hurried down from the third floor. One of them was Elder Feng from before. "What happened? You have the nerve to ask?" The old man with a gloomy gaze stared at Elder Feng. He pointed at the green-robed youth and said angrily, "Didn't you say that this person wouldn't cause any trouble? Look. Chapter 1910. Elder Feng looked at the green-robed young man and was shocked. The green-robed young man, who was leaning against the pillar with his arms crossed, was he not the young man who was picking herbs? Back then, Elder Tan had said that the young man was his distant nephew. How could they not know that was just an excuse? At that time, he had taken a fancy to the young man's indescribable aura. He felt that if the young man was trained by the people inside, he would definitely be extraordinary. At that time, he might even be of help to them. Furthermore, it had been a few months since they had entered, and there had been no news of anything happening. Now that the young man had appeared in the treasure trove building with his people, how could he not be in big trouble? When he thought of the possible disaster that this could cause, his face turned pale, and his body trembled slightly. When he looked around and saw that the black-robed men surrounding them were all cultivators at the fairy realm, he screamed in his heart, "It's over, it's over, it's over, something has really happened." There were more than 20 cultivators of the fairy realm surrounding them, and they only had a few cultivators of the fairy realm on their side. When they saw that the situation was not right, their first thought was to escape. However, when they fled to the back, they saw that there were also many cultivators of the fairy realm guarding them. There was nowhere for them to run. What do you want?" Elder Feng and the others shouted angrily, glaring fiercely at the green-robed young man who was walking slowly towards them. "Of course, I want to return the favor. You've given me such a big gift. How can I not return the favor?" Feng Jiu chuckled and looked at them, saying, "Oh right, you must not know. The headquarters of the Temple of the Dark Knight has been destroyed by us. It looks like you haven't received the news yet. Well, if you had received the news, why would you still be here and not leave without taking any precautions?" When the old men heard this, they widened their eyes in disbelief. What did you say? What do you mean by that? You destroyed the headquarters of the Temple of the Dark Knight? How is that possible? That was simply impossible. There were so many strong cultivators guarding the headquarters. How could it be destroyed so easily? Furthermore, they had not received any news at all. This could not be true. However, although they thought this, another thought surfaced in their minds. If it wasn't true, how could the green-robed young man escape? If it wasn't true, why would they dare to attack the treasure trove building like this? Just as they were in shock, one of the cultivators of the fairy realm was surrounded by them. His arm was cut and fresh blood And they, and. Chapter 1911. Just as Feng Zhu finished speaking, Lei Xiao and the rest instantly attacked. More than 10 people surrounded those people and began to fight. The pressure of the fairy realm experts and the airflow flowed in the endless treasures building, faintly forming an air pressure that could be seen with the naked eye. Bang! Whoosh! Ah! The sound of battle rang out. The sound of collision, the sound of fierce airflow, and miserable shrieks spread out in the night sky, alarming the people in the city. After some of the people from the influential families in the city were startled awake, they sent people to investigate. When they received news that the Endless Treasures building had been surrounded by a group of experts and that outsiders could not get close, they could not help but be shocked. Who dared to attack the Endless Treasures building? The power behind them was, while feeling shocked, they paid close attention, but did not dare to get too close. They listened to the sounds of battle from a distance, and the more they heard, the more shocked they became. What kind of power dared to compete with the Endless Treasures building? Were they planning to destroy the Endless Treasures building in one night? They watched in bewilderment until they saw that the Endless Treasures building had been set ablaze after midnight. Only then did they suddenly come to their senses. However, when they looked at the Endless Treasures building's main door, they did not see anyone coming out from inside. However, they could hear that the commotion had gradually died down after the fire had started. This fire burned for an entire night, burning the entire Endless Treasures building to ashes before it was extinguished in the small courtyard in the northern part of the city. Lei Xiao and the rest had already changed out of their black robes and into ordinary clothes. Although at first glance, they did not look as ferocious as before, the fierce and unyielding aura on their bodies could not be missing. The group stood side by side, respectfully standing in front of Feng Zhu. Looking at the young man in green robes in front of them, their hearts were filled with an indescribable pride. This person was their leader. He was so powerful, so unfathomable. In their hearts, he was so omnipotent. His image was so lofty that no one could compare to him. After living for so long, this was the first person that they admired and submitted to from the bottom of their hearts. Feng Zhu looked at the people who were ready and stood up straight. He couldn't help but reveal a smile. Although we have only been together for a few months, we can also be said to be brothers who have experienced life and death together. Since you are all following me, then I will tell you about my identity. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Then, they rejoiced and anticipation filled their eyes. One of them could not help but ask curiously, "Captain, are you a disciple of a hidden clan?" "Captain, you're not the son of some sex patriarch, are you?" "Captain, don't tell me you've regained your youth?" "Captain," one by one, they asked curiously, unable to suppress their curiosity. Pairs of eyes looked at the smiling young man in green, guessing in their hearts what was the identity of their captain. Feng Zhu listened to their words and could not help but chuckle. "All right, don't make wild guesses." He waved his hand and touched his face. "Wait for me." Then, he turned around and entered the room. Seeing their captain enter the room and close the door, the group could not help but discuss. "Who do you think our captain is? Why does he look so mysterious?" Chapter 1912. Lei Xiao glanced at the crowd and they all grinned. One of them replied, "That's true. No matter what, he's still our leader. But to be honest, we're really curious about our leader's identity. Aren't you curious?" That person asked and glanced at Lei Xiao with a smile. Lei Xiao coughed and said with a straight face, "What's there to be curious about? Didn't our leader ask us to wait? We'll find out soon. What's there to be curious about?" Hearing this, a smile appeared on number one's cold face. Just as he was about to say something, someone beside him exclaimed, Look, our leader is out. How did he change? Our leader looks even more handsome than before. I know, our leader has been in disguise all this time. But what kind of disguise is this? Those people can't even tell? Even if our leader didn't say so, we still couldn't tell that he was in disguise. But you don't say, our leader's face is really handsome. I reckon he'll definitely charm a bunch of young girls. Ha ha ha, you can just say that if our leader is a woman, he'll definitely be a devastatingly beautiful woman. That's enough. How can you say that? Comparing our leader to a woman? Are you itching for a beating? Be careful, our leader will scold you. Hee, I'm just saying it casually. Besides, how can our leader be a woman? What kind of woman is so perverted and powerful? Don't you think so? That's right, that's right. Everyone saw that their leader was already in front of them and quickly expressed their opinions. The bearded man even grinned and said loudly, "How can our leader be a woman? Tell me, which woman in this world is as powerful as our leader? Look at our leader, he doesn't look like a woman at all. He's just a handsome young man with a graceful demeanor. Don't you think so?" That's right, that's right. Everyone quickly agreed. However, when they saw their leader raising his eyebrows and crossing his arms over his chest and looking at them with a faint smile, they couldn't help but have goosebumps. Why was their leader's smile so dangerous? Seeing this, their hearts were in a mess. Could it be that they had said something wrong? Although the bearded man was thick-skinned, he still felt his hair stand on end when he saw the smile on his captain's lips. He couldn't help but rub his head and smile sheepishly as he said, "Captain, don't be angry. We're just joking. Really, you're just a little better looking and more handsome. You really don't look like a woman at all. Really." "Is that so? Don't I look like a woman?" Fengjiu glanced at him coldly, his eyes still smiling. Although he was smiling, the bearded man couldn't bring himself to smile. He immediately pulled a long face and said, "If anyone dares to say that Captain looks like a woman, I'll get angry with them. We're all men and we've slept on the same bed. You've even seen me running around naked. How could it be a woman?" Fengjiu chuckled. That chuckle made the bearded man's hair stand on end. Why did he feel that something was wrong? What exactly went wrong? He scratched his head, but couldn't figure it out. Chapter 1913. What a coincidence! I am a woman. Everyone's expression turned strange when they heard this. Did they hear wrongly? The captain said that he was a woman? Everyone couldn't react for a while. Their eyes kept looking at him from left to right, up and down. Other than the captain's face being a little too handsome and his figure being a little weaker than theirs, he didn't look like a woman at all. "Captain, you're joking, right?" the bearded man said embarrassedly. At this moment, he did not believe that the captain was telling the truth. He simply thought that he was joking. This was clearly a young man. How did he look like a woman? "Do I look like I'm joking?" Fengjiu glanced at him and said with a faint smile, "Didn't I tell you to pay attention to your image and not take off your clothes? What? You've forgotten so quickly? So, Captain, you are really a woman?" When he heard this and recalled the scene, his face gradually turned from red to white, then from white to red. He stuttered as he spoke. He was so embarrassed that he could not lift his head. He lowered his head and did not dare to lift it up. It was as if he wanted to find a hole in the ground to hide in. He was too ashamed to face anyone. When the others saw this, they all widened their eyes in astonishment. They looked at the young man in green with dumbfounded expressions. He was really a woman? This young man with a noble aura from head to toe. They had thought that he was a young master from some aristocratic family. But now, he said that he was a woman? She really didn't have the slightest bit of a woman's demeanor and appearance. Which woman would have such an unbridled and confident expression between her brows? What kind of woman would have a noble aura and also a faint demonic aura? Captain, you're really a woman? One of them could not help but ask. He felt that his mind was in a mess. Since when were the women in this world so abnormal? When the crowd heard that question, they all held their breaths and looked at the figure in green. They pressed one hand to their chest and felt the sound of their hearts beating. Each beat was stronger than the last, as if it was about to explode. This is too unbelievable. How could a woman endure the same hardships as them? How could she endure the same hardships as them? Why would he not care about anything, sneak into the training camp, and sleep on the same bed as them? Thoughts and questions surfaced in their minds. Even though they heard the captain say it himself, they still did not dare to believe that it was true. As for the bearded man, his face had already turned red. He lowered his head and shrank to the back. Fengjiu looked at the crowd and smiled. That's right, I am a woman. All right, let's put this matter to rest. Let's talk business. She looked at the crowd as she spoke. Her gaze swept past each and every one of them. Only then did her cold voice come out of her mouth. I have a force under me called the Heavenly Yuan Palace. Here, I have 8 Phoenix Guards who will follow me through life and death. From this moment onwards, all of you will belong to the Heavenly Yuan Palace. However, I do not plan on letting you show yourselves. Instead, I hope that all of you will hide yourselves and return to cultivate. In the future, when I have orders for you or when I ask you to show yourselves, you can show yourselves. Chapter 1914. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other as if they had something to ask. After a slight pause, Lei Xiao asked, Captain, from today onwards, are we also members of the Phoenix Guard? Feng Jiu glanced at them and took out Phoenix Guard tokens from the space and handed them over. At the same time, she said, when I don't need you, you can go back to your previous lives. You can also find a place to cultivate. You can also become mercenaries. You can also help the Tianyuan Palace recruit more cultivators. However, there is one last thing you have to remember. Tianyuan Palace isn't a place that anyone can enter, and not just anyone can become my subordinate. Treacherous people, ruthless people without a bottom line, evil people, rapists are not accepted. She spoke word by word and her voice slowly entered everyone's ears. At the same time, when you go out, you have to always remember my rules. You can't bully the weak with your own strength, and you can't use Tianyuan Palace's name to cause trouble outside. If you encounter something you can't solve, you can ask for help from the forces under Tianyuan Palace. I will tell you the markings later. When everyone heard this, they held the Phoenix Guards in their hands and solemnly and powerfully replied, Yes, Captain, rest assured. Next, Feng Jiu told them some of the markings of Tianyuan Palace. At the same time, she also told them to pass on messages and some things that they needed to do in the future. Finally, she let everyone leave. What are you still standing here for? Feng Jiu glanced at the man with a bitter face. Although he originally had a beard, he was much more handsome after shaving. Captain, you saw me naked. Tell me, how am I going to get a wife in the future? He stood there with a red face. Everyone else had left, but he was still standing there. Hearing this, Feng Jiu smiled. Is that so? Then do I need to take responsibility? As she spoke, she took out 3 silver needles. As long as I prick you a few times, you won't need to get a wife in the future. At that time, I will naturally take responsibility for you until the end. Prick me a few times? Captain will take responsibility for me until the end? He was stunned and asked with a puzzled expression, Why did the captain put me in charge after a few stabs? Feng Jiu smiled maliciously. He played with the silver needles in his hand and said slowly, You can't get it up, so you can't get a wife. Since you can't get a wife, I will take responsibility for you until the end. Hearing this, he shuddered. His whole body tensed up and he quickly took a few steps back. No, 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 I was just kidding. Captain, I'll go first. As soon as he finished speaking, he tensed up his body and quickly left. Looking at his sorry figure, it felt like he was fleeing. Fengjiu snorted as he looked at the figure that flew out of the room. He put away the silver needles and flicked his robe. It had been a while since they left. Thinking about it, Du Fan and the others should have established a firm foothold here. The only question was how their forces were developing. Now that the matter was settled, it was a good time to go back and take a look. Calculating the time, perhaps Zhe should also be here. Chapter 1915. Outside the town where the Nayland family was located, nearly 100 people from both families were quarreling. Didn't you say that you were going to pick up the bride today? Look at what's happening now. Where's the groom? The groom ran away and you sent this person to pick up the bride. Does your Yang family really think that just anyone can marry into our Yuan family? If you don't give us an explanation today, I won't let this matter rest. A middle-aged man who was the leader said angrily. A good marriage was ruined just like that, and they even dared to send someone who wasn't presentable to fool them. They were too hateful. Brother Yang, don't be angry. Let's talk about this properly. The patriarch of the Yuan clan wiped his sweat, his face full of shame. I really didn't know that my unfilial son actually ran away from the marriage and even called a branch relative of the clan to come and fetch the bride. This matter is my fault, I apologize to you here. The Yuan family head said apologetically and bowed to the person in front of him. Brother Yang, you see, this matter can't be discussed here. There are a lot of people coming and going outside the city. It's not good for the second young lady's reputation. Don't you think so? Let's go back to the house and talk about it. Now you want to talk about it? Your Yuan family is too much of a bully. Just as they were talking, they suddenly heard a scream. When they heard that the scream came from above, everyone instinctively looked up. Fengjiu exclaimed. She lost her balance and fell from the sky. Before she could stabilize her body, she fell into the sedan chair. Bang! After the heavy crash, 2 muffled groans could be heard. Everyone looked at the sedan chair that was directly smashed and was stunned. It took a while for them to recover. Waiter! Father Yang suddenly came back to his senses and cried out in alarm. He quickly squeezed through the crowd and ran towards the sedan. When he lifted the lid of the sedan and saw the scene inside, he was completely stunned. Not to mention the people outside, even Fengjiu, who fell from above and directly fell onto the girl, was stunned. She looked at the girl in front of her who was wearing a wedding dress. Yes, although she was wearing a wedding dress, she could only be called a girl and not a woman. The girl was wearing a bright red wedding dress. Her chubby round face had a pair of big round eyes. Under her small nose was a bright red mouth. However, her mouth was slightly open and she was eating a mouthful of pastries. Even when she suddenly fell down, the girl didn't show any fear on her face. There was only curiosity and a kind of surprise that she couldn't figure out. What made her even more astonished was that this chubby girl suddenly threw away the pastry in her hand and actually reached out to hug her tightly. She even shouted words that made her extremely speechless. Father! Father! I want him! I want this little brother! I don't want that pretty boy from the Yuan family anymore! I want him! I want him! The girl's crisp words came out of her mouth. Perhaps it was because she was plump and strong, but with this hug, Fengjiu's entire body was pressed against the girl's plump and soft breasts, causing her face to flush red. Chapter 1916. Little brother, you're so good-looking. Be my groom. The fat girl's round eyes narrowed into crescent moons as her rosy round face was filled with joy. No way. Fengjiu directly rejected. All right. That'll do. The fat girl acted coquettishly as she hugged Fengjiu tightly with both hands. Her smiling eyes looked at the person in front of her. Phew! Fengjiu gasped for breath and shouted, "Quickly let go! You're about to strangle me to death!" She stretched out both hands and grabbed the girl's hands to pull them apart. Eh! The fat girl blinked her round eyes as she looked at Fengjiu in surprise and joy. "Little brother, you're so awesome. You can actually pull my hands apart." She was very strong, and those who were hugged by her would usually not be able to leave. She didn't expect him to be so strong that he was able to pull her hands apart with just a pull. The corner of Fengjiu's mouth twitched as she shot a glance at the fat girl and thought to herself, "This girl's strength is not ordinary. Her strength is even stronger than those who cultivate profound energy. If it wasn't for her cultivation, how would she be able to pull her hands apart?" Just as she was about to turn around and leave the sedan, her thigh was suddenly hugged. She couldn't help but stiffen as she turned around to glare at the fat girl in anger. "Let go! Little brother, where are you going? Bring me along." The fat girl smiled fawningly as she hugged Fengjiu's thigh and refused to let go. Fengjiu's forehead was filled with black lines as she didn't speak to the girl anymore. Instead, she turned around to look at the middle-aged man standing outside the sedan. "This is your daughter?" "Yes, yes." Family head Yang met the youth's serene gaze and couldn't help but nod. "Since she's your daughter, why aren't you pulling her away?" It wasn't that she didn't have a way to leave, but if she forcefully shook her off, she would probably hurt this fat girl. Family head Yang looked at Fengjiu and didn't know why he was somewhat fearful of this youth. He hurriedly shouted to his daughter, "Shower, quickly let go of this gentleman. You can't hug him like this. Quickly let go." "Waiter?" Fengjiu's mouth twitched. He glanced at the chubby girl. "What a unique nickname. Little brother, where is your home? What's your name? How old are you?" The chubby girl let go of Fengjiu's thigh and hugged her hand instead. Who knew that she would be flung away before she could hold her hand properly? "Little brother?" She stared blankly for a moment, blinking her eyes at the young man who had run out of the palanquin. She watched as the young man squeezed into the crowd outside, and was about to disappear from her sight. She could not help but flatten her lips and her eyes filled with tears. Soon after, large teardrops the size of beads fell from her eyes. Sob. "Daddy, little big brother ran away. He ran away, quickly catch him for me, I want little big brother, I want him." Chapter 1917. He looked at his daughter with heartache. Seeing her crying face, he hurriedly comforted her. "Don't cry. Father will help you catch him. If you like, we can take him in as a son-in-law." As he spoke, he didn't forget to shout to the Yang family, Quickly catch that young master." As he finished speaking, he pulled his daughter and chased after him. The Ruan family was dumbfounded. The Ruan family head suddenly came back to his senses and hurriedly shouted, Brother Yang! Brother Yang! The marriage between our two families! Catch that young master for me! The marriage between our two families will be cancelled. I won't pursue the matter of the groom running away from today's wedding." The Yang family head's words came from afar. The Ruan family head's face lit up when he heard it. He immediately shouted excitedly to the Ruan family, Quickly catch him! What are you all standing there for? Catch that young man and send him to the Yang family." Yes. Everyone came back to their senses and responded. They quickly chased after him. "Don't run! Stop! Don't run! Catch him! Don't run!" In an instant, the people from the two families chased after the young man in green at the front. In an instant, the commotion caused by them alarmed the people from the other powers in the city. As for Fengjiu, seeing the large group of people chasing after him, he couldn't help but curse in a low voice. He quickly dashed into the alley and entered the space. Why are the people here so bold? They can even directly snatch someone they like? Feng Jiu lightly exhaled and shook his head. He muttered, "It's fine if that girl doesn't know her limits, but how can the people from the two families be so reckless? They're really reckless." In the space, a few contracted beasts saw that she was chased into the space and happily surrounded her. "Master, master." Especially the little white tiger. In just a few months it had grown into a tiger's head and was chubby. All right. Move aside. I'll change my appearance and then go out." She waved her hand and said. She sat in the space and thought for a while. Then, she took out a lot of things and prepared to change her appearance. Outside, because the two families were searching everywhere in the city, many people were alarmed. Some of the families sent people out to inquire, but when they heard that it was the Yang family patriarch who spoiled his fat daughter to the point of being out of control, all the patriarchs could only shake their heads and sigh. In the Nayland family, the Nayland family head listened to his youngest son talk about what happened in the city. He shook his head and smiled. The Yang family and the Ruan family originally had an engagement, but the Ruan family's son ran away from the marriage. Now, the Yang family's second daughter took a fancy to a young man on the way. They actually caused such a big commotion. As he said this, the Nayland family's head seemed to have thought of something. He looked at his youngest son, frowned, and asked, "Your eldest brother didn't go out these 2 days?" The man wearing embroidered clothes next to him shook his head. "No. Since the day he came back, he's been in the courtyard. He also ordered that no one is to disturb him. Yesterday, little sister wanted to go in and take a look, but she accidentally triggered a mechanism. Fortunately, Big Brother sent her out, so she's fine." Hearing this, the Nayland family head slightly frowned. "I saw that he didn't look very good when he came back that day. I asked him what happened, but he didn't say. I don't know what happened." Hearing this, the man in embroidered clothes' eyes flashed. "Father, son heard a piece of news, but I don't know if it's true or false." Chapter 1918. The brocade-clothed man, Nayland Zian, paused for a moment. He glanced at his father and said, "I heard that a few days ago, Big Brother was seen coming out of a brothel." As soon as his voice fell, he hurriedly said, "Maybe that person saw wrongly. After all, how could a person like Big Brother go to a brothel?" Hearing this, Nayland family head was startled. "Brothel? How is that possible? Mo Chen would never go to a brothel." Nayland family head waved his hand and said, "Even if he went to a brothel, he probably had something to deal with. Putting aside our Nayland family, just based on his identity as Tianji Elder's disciple, there are many people who want to marry their daughters to our family. Yes, that's why I sent people to investigate. I heard that it was someone who sent him there. At that time, Big Brother was so drunk that he was unconscious." Speaking up to here, his voice gradually became softer. When he thought that his big brother might have been drunk and sent to a brothel, he was full of admiration for that person. His big brother, a banished immortal who didn't touch the mortal world, actually had a day when he fell for someone else's trick. It was really inconceivable. The Nayland clan's master was stunned for a long time. Then, he instinctively asked with a bit of curiosity, "Who has such great ability? How could he get him drunk? And to send him to a brothel? Then he wasn't." Cough. He clenched his fist and coughed lightly. He didn't say anything else. Nayland Zian smiled brightly. "I heard that he was only touched up and down. Because that person specifically told me not to." Big Brother woke up when he was halfway through taking off his clothes. Cough, cough. The Nayland family's patriarch couldn't help but reveal a smile. He tried his best to keep a straight face as he said, "It's good that he's fine. I thought that something happened to him in the past 2 days. So it's because of this. All right, tell everyone not to disturb him. Let him have some peace and quiet." "Okay." Nayland Zian smiled. After bowing, he left. On the other side, because the two families were looking for a handsome young man in green clothes, once the news spread, Not only did Xianyuan Mose know, but even Leng Hua and Du Fan knew. Almost as soon as they heard the news, they came out to look for her, thinking that no matter what, they would meet her on the street, right? However, they didn't expect that Fengjiu would come out again after changing clothes in the space. She was dressed in an inconspicuous gray robe and had a hunched back. Her hair was white and her face was full of wrinkles. She was holding a 1-meter-long bamboo stick in her hand. At first glance, she looked like a very ordinary old woman. In addition, she had one hand behind her back and the other holding a walking stick as she walked slowly. That appearance, that posture, that expression, no one would suspect that she was in disguise. Fengjiu narrowed her eyes and walked unhurriedly. She originally wanted to disguise herself casually, but after thinking about it, she disguised herself as an old woman. She believed that even if Leng Hua and the others passed by her, they wouldn't recognize her. Thinking of this, she smiled happily. The people of the two families were looking for her everywhere. With such a big movement, Leng Hua and the others must have received the news. Chapter 1919. She walked on the street with her walking stick. When she saw the hawkers shouting that they were selling sugar-fried chestnuts, she slowly walked up to them. She stared at the chestnuts and smelled the fragrance. She didn't want to leave. "Elder, do you want to eat chestnuts? They're fresh out of the oven, still piping hot, fragrant, and sweet." The hawker shook the chestnuts in the wok while greeting her with a smile. "Give me a portion of sugar-fried chestnuts." While speaking, Fengjiu took out a piece of silver from her sleeve and handed it to the hawker. When the peddler heard the clear voice of a young man and looked at the old woman whose face was full of wrinkles, he couldn't help but be stunned. He stared at her and sized her up as he took out a bag full of chestnuts and handed it over. "Here, these are your chestnuts. Cough." "Many thanks." Fengjiu lightly coughed. Her voice changed and became old and hoarse. After she took the bag of chestnuts, she walked step by step as if she didn't see the dumbfounded gaze of the hawker behind her. She peeled the chestnuts and ate them as she walked. She put the peeled husks back into the bag and looked at some people walking quickly on the street, looking around and asking questions. She couldn't help but narrow her eyes and reveal a smile. This feeling of watching them looking for someone but not being able to find her, why was it so fun? After walking around the street, she was a bit thirsty because of the chestnuts, so she walked to a tea stall at the corner of the street and sat down. "Tea stall owner, give me a cup of tea to drink." She smiled with her eyes squinted, and used her old and hoarse voice to wave and shout. "Okay, elder, please sit for a moment. I'll immediately come over and pour some for you." The busy middle-aged man smiled and responded. After helping the customers at the other tables with tea, he came in front of Fengjiu. "Elder, what kind of tea would you like to drink? We have chrysanthemum tea here that can clear heat and detoxify. We also have new tea from the Tea Mountain family, fried tea, and some flower tea. Other than tea, we also have some mung bean soup. Just give me a cup of fried tea." As Fengjiu spoke, he poured the bag of chestnuts onto the table, peeled them, and put them back into the bag. Sitting at the tea stall, they drank tea and ate chestnut. From time to time, they would listen to the hawkers on the street and watch the people coming and going on the street. The downtown area was bustling, but this small tea stall seemed leisurely and comfortable. However, at this moment, a surprised voice suddenly sounded. "Little brother." Fengjiu, who was drinking tea, froze when he heard the voice. He turned around instinctively. Then, she saw the fat girl running towards her. Just as she was thinking in astonishment that the fat girl could still recognize her despite her disguise, she saw the fat girl run past her. Like a wisp of smoke, the fat girl ran to the tea table in front of her and grabbed the man in green who was talking to his friend at the tea table. "Little brother." The corners of Fengjiu's mouth twitched and he lowered his gaze. It turned out that he had mistaken her for someone else. She knew it. How could he possibly recognize her? "What little brother?" Go away, go away! The man in green was delighted when he turned around, thinking that it was a delicate beauty. Who knew that it was a heavyweight beauty? He couldn't help but show disgust on his face and pushed her away. Chapter 1920. Ah! Several cries of alarm rang out. Once the panicked cries rang out, it attracted the attention of everyone on the street. Among the cries of alarm, one came from the fat girl, another came from the shopkeeper of the tea stall, and the last one came from the young family head who had rushed over from a distance and witnessed the scene. Bang! Hiss! The sound of a heavy object falling to the ground rang out, followed by the sound of a gasp. For a moment the scene fell silent. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared in astonishment at the fat girl lying on top of the old woman. As for the old woman who had fallen to the ground, other than the sound of a gasp, she could not even make a sound of alarm or cry for help. Had she been crushed to death? Everyone's hearts trembled and they were all dumbfounded for a moment. No one reacted and stepped forward to help the fat girl up. It was the fat girl who had fallen to the ground who regained her senses first and hurriedly got up. Granny? Granny, how are you? Are you all right? I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't know I would crush you. She stood there helplessly, her eyes red from anxiety and worry. Tears welled up in her eyes. She wanted to step forward to help the old woman up, but she was afraid that she would use too much strength and hurt the old woman again. Fengjiu lay on the ground and gasped, feeling extremely uncomfortable from being crushed. She paused for a moment before exhaling. She was then helped up by the young family head and the fat girl who had rushed over. Granny, are you all right? The young family head glared at his daughter. Little girl, look at yourself. If you're looking for someone, just look for someone. Why did you knock down an old woman? This old woman's bones are usually very weak. If you break them just by sitting on them, I'd like to see what you're going to do. The fat girl lowered her head and said softly, I didn't know I would bump into someone. It's all that person's fault for pushing me so hard just now. As she said that, she turned around to look for the young man who had pushed her, who knew that he had already run away when he saw that the situation was not right. Unable to find her, the chubby girl bit her lips and tugged at her father's sleeve, saying, Father, let's bring this old granny home. Let the doctor take a look at her and see if she's hurt anywhere. Oh right, I have some medicine for internal injuries here. You can give it to Grandma. As she spoke, she rummaged through her space ring and found a pill for treating internal injuries. She held the pill to Fengjiu's mouth and said, Granny, don't worry. If you suffer from internal injuries, you'll be fine after taking this pill. It's okay if you don't recover. Come home with me, my father will take care of you. Come, take this pill first. Fengjiu stared at the chubby girl who was about to stuff a pill into her mouth. He felt his scalp go numb. This fat lass looked normal, but why was her behavior so abnormal? Hearing his daughter's words, Patriarch Yang's eyelids twitched. Glancing at his daughter, who specialized in deceiving him, he secretly shook his head, sighed, and stepped forward. Waiter, don't mess around. Put the pill away. This silly girl, she didn't even look at the grade of the inner core. She actually took it out and gave it to an old woman without saying anything. Chapter 1921. Someone come. Take this old lady to the Renshin Hall in the city, and ask Dr. Hong to examine her injuries. Before he finished speaking, he was stunned by his daughter's actions. Father, don't trouble yourself. I'll carry the old lady there. I knocked her down, so I have to take responsibility. The chubby girl bent her back to Fengjiu without saying anything. While Fengjiu was still stunned, she directly carried her on her back and ran to the medical hall. Being carried by a girl and running, Fengjiu was also dumbfounded. What the hell is going on? She looked at the chubby girl under her, thought for a moment and said, Chubby girl, put me down. I'm not injured. No, people under me will definitely be injured. I'm afraid your ribs are broken, so I have to check, the chubby girl said. Even though she was carrying a person, she was still running as fast as flying. Seeing the chubby girl's breathing was steady and her pace was fast as she shuttled through the streets, her eyes flashed and she carefully sized her up. Seeing that the chubby girl's cultivation was not bad, she could not help but ask curiously, "You're getting married today?" The chubby girl was still wearing her wedding clothes. "That was the marriage arranged by my grandfather. I saw that the boy from the Ruan family was quite good-looking, so I wanted to marry him. Who knew that he would run away? But it doesn't matter. I met an even better-looking little brother earlier, and I'm looking for him. Old lady, have you seen him? He's wearing blue clothes and looks very, very handsome." Fengzhou's mouth twitched. "I haven't seen him. He should be from another place. I don't think he's from our city. If he was from the city, it's impossible that I don't know." As she spoke, she turned into an alley. However, suddenly, her body stiffened and she fell down. Fengzhou jumped down from her back and patted the fat girl who was lying on the ground with her eyes wide open in astonishment. She smiled and said, "Little girl, we'll meet again. Your acupoints will be unlocked soon." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and walked out while humming a tune. However, not long after she walked out of the alley and was still looking at some small things on the street, she caught a glimpse of a few rogue cultivators walking toward the alley with their arms around each other's shoulders and laughing. She couldn't help but stop in her tracks and frown slightly. The chubby girl's acupoints should not have been unsealed yet. Those people did not seem like good people. If they entered the alley and saw the chubby girl lying on the ground. Thinking of this, she walked towards the alley. If her unintentional actions had harmed that fat girl, her conscience would not be at ease. At this moment, just as Fengzhou had guessed, the few men who had entered the alley with their arms around each other couldn't help but laugh out loud when they saw the fat girl lying on the ground. "Look, there's actually a woman here, and she's even wearing a wedding dress. Do you want us brothers to be the bridegroom again? Ha! This woman is like the full moon on the 15th of August. Her entire body is round, what's there to see? But the things on her should be worth a lot of money. Just the jade pendant on her waist should be enough for us brothers to eat and drink for a few months." Chapter 1922. TSK. So what? Let's take her belongings first, then kill her and throw her into a corner. Who would know that we did it? One of the men said viciously as he stared at the fat girl's belongings. Look at the items on her body. They are all treasures. The Yang family head dotes on his daughter the most. She must have a lot of things on her. As he spoke, the man smiled sinisterly and said to the men beside him, "Go and keep an eye on the alley. Don't let anyone come in and spoil the fun." What kind of fun can we do in broad daylight? Fengzhou, who was dressed as an old woman, walked in with a walking stick in her hand. Her voice was old and hoarse. When she appeared, the men burst into laughter. I was wondering who it was. So it's an old woman. Did she send herself to her death? Kill her! One of them ordered the person beside him with a sinister voice filled with viciousness. When the fat girl on the ground saw Fengzhou return, surprise flashed across her eyes. She secretly used her spiritual energy to break through her acupuncture points, hoping that her sealed acupuncture points could be unsealed as soon as possible. Killing all of you would dirty my hands, and I would be busy dealing with the corpses, Fengzhou said as she stood there without moving. Instead, she called out, "Swallow Cloud." As soon as she said that, a ray of light flashed and Swallow Cloud leaped out of thin air. It pounced on one of the men and bit off his neck. Crack! When the sound of bones breaking rang out, the man let out a blood-curdling scream. The smell of fresh blood filled the air. The bloody scene, coupled with Swallow Cloud's ferocious aura and coercion, scared the men so much that they fell to the ground and wet their pants. Super divine beast. They couldn't run at all. Their faces had turned ghastly pale, and they didn't even have the strength to flee under the powerful pressure. Just as they were about to collapse, Tun Yun pounced forward and bit off their necks. It wasn't long before the entire alley was filled with the dense smell of blood. After the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, Fengjiu walked a few steps on the busy street and turned back to look. She saw the fat girl's eyes shining and smiling as she followed behind her. She could not help but sigh helplessly and stop in her tracks. "How long are you going to follow me? Didn't I tell you? I'm a girl, not a guy." That place was filled with the stench of blood. Coupled with the ferocity of the swallowing cloud, she had originally thought that the chubby girl would be so frightened that she would quickly flee. Who would have thought that the chubby girl would follow closely behind her and even stare at her with a smile? That gaze and that demeanor really made her extremely speechless. "I know that. But you haven't told me your name yet, have you? If you leave, where can I find you to play in the future?" Yang Xiao'er quickly stepped forward and asked. Fengjiu looked at her and asked, "Where is the Nalan family?" "The Nalan family?" Yang Xiao'er's eyes darted around. She looked at her and asked, "You're from the Nalan family?" She then added, "I know where it is. I'll take you there." Just as the two of them were heading towards the Nalan family, the atmosphere in the Nalan family was strange. In the main hall of the Nalan family. Chapter 1923. The Nalan family's head and his youngest son looked at each other, feeling puzzled. He paused for a moment before asking, "Young master, who are you waiting for? If it's someone from my residence, I can send someone to call him over." "No need, the person I'm waiting for will be here soon." Xianyuan Mo sipped his tea and said. Hearing this, the Nalan family's head and Nalan Xian were startled. The person they were waiting for will be here soon? Even though this black-robed man didn't speak much, and his pressure and aura were restrained, they could still see that this person wasn't ordinary. He sat there leisurely sipping his tea, which made them, as the host, seem somewhat restrained and cautious. They couldn't be blamed, but this black-robed man faintly emitted a noble aura. That kind of aura of a superior, even if they saw it, they wouldn't dare to be presumptuous in front of him. However, did anyone in their family know such a person? If there was, it was probably only. The father and son looked at each other, and the same person appeared in their minds. This black-robed man couldn't have come for his eldest son, right? The Nalan family's head pondered for a moment, and felt that this was very likely. Perhaps, this black-robed man was Emo Chen's friend? Then he was sitting here and waiting. Could it be that Emo Chen knew he was coming? Would he be here soon? The Nalan family's head gave his youngest son a look, and he saw Nalan Xian quietly leaving the hall and heading towards the backyard. Although Hui Lang, who was standing behind Xianyuan Mo's, was standing respectfully, his eyes were still looking outside the hall from time to time. Did that familiar figure not come? When they received news that the ghost doctor was most likely already in the city, their master brought them to the Nalan family. He said that the ghost doctor might not know where they were staying, so she would definitely come to the Nalan family first. Rather than going outside to look for her, it was better to wait for her to come to the Nalan family. However, they had been sitting here for a while, but they didn't see young Master Emochin. Could it be that he was traumatized by being thrown into the brothel by their master that day? So he didn't dare to come out to meet her? That shouldn't be possible, right? Emochin wasn't that kind of person. At this time, Fengjiu and the fat girl were standing in front of Nalan Manor's door. Looking at the words Nalan Manor, Fengjiu gestured. "Go, knock on the door." "All right." The chubby girl nodded and quickly stepped forward to knock on the door. Not long after, an old man came to open the door. When he saw the two people outside, he was startled and asked, "Who are you looking for?" The fat girl was also stunned for a moment. After a while, she turned to look at Fengjiu and asked, "Who are we looking for?" Fengjiu narrowed his eyes and said with a smile in an old voice, "I'm looking for Nalan Emochin." You two are. The old man hesitantly looked at the two people in front of him. He was puzzled. Why were there so many guests today? His friend, Fengjiu said. How about this? Please come in and take a seat. The clan head and the others are in the main hall. Once they were inside, the clan head would make a decision. Thus, the old man invited the two people in and had someone quickly report to the clan head. At this time, the Nalan clan head, who was sitting in the main hall and drinking tea and feeling the strange atmosphere, glanced at the black-robed man from time to time. He wondered how long this person was going to sit there. Then, he heard someone quickly come in and report. Chapter 1924. Hearing this, the Nalan family head's first reaction was, "Why is there someone else here? It can't be another freak, right?" Just as he was about to speak, he saw from the corner of his eye that the black-robed man sitting to the side finally put down the teacup in his hand and looked up. Seeing his gaze, he couldn't help but chuckle. My eldest son hasn't returned for a long time, maybe some of his friends have come to pay a visit. As he spoke, he ordered the people outside the hall, "Quickly invite them in." Xianyuan Mose listened and didn't say anything, but his gaze had already moved outside. Hui Lang, who was standing behind him, also looked outside with some joy in his eyes. Sure enough, as master guessed, the ghost doctor will definitely come here. Not long after, when they saw two figures leisurely walk in from outside, Hui Lang was a little dumbfounded. He stared at the two figures left and right, guessing, could it be that one of them is the ghost doctor? When the Nalan family head saw that it was the Yang family head's most beloved second daughter who came in, and an old woman with a walking stick in her hand, he was also a little stunned. He had seen the Yang family's second daughter before, but what was up with that old woman? Moreover, didn't they say that the Yang family's eldest daughter was searching the streets for a green-robed youth? Why did she come to his house? At this moment, Xianyuan Mose, who was sitting, looked at the two people who came in, then stood up and walked over, step by step, to the old woman. When Fengjiu saw him here, other than being surprised, she was also pleasantly surprised. Just as she was wondering if he would be able to recognize her in her current state, she saw that he had already walked in front of her with large strides. Thus, she raised her head slightly, revealing a smile, her eyes narrowed as she smiled, and said in an old and hoarse voice, "Young man, you're really handsome." Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose's deep black eyes flashed with a smile, and a touch of gentleness appeared on his stern face. He looked at the person in front of him, and said in a low and magnetic voice, "Then did he catch your eye? If he caught my eye, can I bring him home?" she asked with a smile. Hearing this, and seeing the two looking at each other, the fat girl and the Nalan family head were a little dumbfounded. What the hell was this? Why couldn't they understand what they were seeing and hearing? Could it be that these two people knew each other? The black-robed man sat and didn't speak before. Why did he run to the old woman now? Was there something special about this old woman? As he was thinking, he saw the black-robed to touch her face, Tuz's face, but his actions and expressions, he had a layer of goosebumps. Xianyuan Mose gently caressed Fengjiu's aged face. So this is what Audiobook looks like when she gets old. Fengjiu narrowed her eyes and said, "What do you think? Scared?" "How could that be?" As he spoke, he reached out to hold her hand and said, "I've been waiting for you here for a long time. Since you're back, let's go back." Fengjiu smiled and narrowed his eyes. "All right, do you know where Ling Hua and the others are?" "I know." "Well, then you have to tell Emotion, lest he keeps worrying. Just leave a message." Xianyuan Mose said, his voice paused, and a smile flashed through his eyes. "Also, I don't think he wants to see anyone recently." Chapter 1925. Let's talk as we walk. He held her hand and said. Fengjiu smiled slightly. "Okay, I'll tell Nalan family head." Thus, Xianyuan Mose held her hand and walked forward, arriving in front of Nalan family head, who had a complicated gaze. Nalan family head, I'm Fengjiu. I wonder if Imo-chern has mentioned me to you? Hearing this, Nalan family head was stunned for a moment, then quickly reacted. This clear voice didn't sound old at all. So this old woman was Fengjiu, the ghost doctor in disguise? Thinking of this, he looked up and down again, and couldn't help but sigh. This disguise technique was so exquisite, even if he didn't say anything, he wouldn't have been able to tell that it was a disguise. So you're the ghost doctor, sorry for the disrespect. He hurriedly cupped his hands in greeting and said, My eldest son has instructed me to treat you as a guest of honor if you come. Please, take a seat. My youngest son has already gone to call his eldest brother. He should be here soon. Before Fengjiu could speak, Xianyuan Mose had already said, No, we're going back. Nalan family head was stunned for a moment. His gaze couldn't help but look at Fengjiu, then at the black-robed man. So, this person was waiting for Fengjiu here? Could it be that after asking for so long, he didn't say who he was waiting for? Fengjiu glanced at Xianyuan Mose, his eyes smiling, and said to Nalan family head, Then I'll have to trouble Nalan family head to tell Imo-chan that I've arrived. I'll invite him for tea another day. So it's like that. That's fine, I'll let him know later. Saying this, Nalan family head looked at Yang Shao and asked, How did this Yang family's second miss? Oh, that's because I met her on the road. I didn't know where the Nalan family was, so she said she would bring me here. Later, I'll have to trouble the Nalan family head to send someone to send her home. Fengjiu looked at the chubby girl, and then glanced at the excited Hui Lang. So that's how it is. No problem. I'll get someone to send her back later. The Nalan family's head nodded and said. Yang Shao shouted, I'm not going back. She ran to Fengjiu's side and grabbed Fengjiu's clothes tightly with her chubby claws. She looked up at him angrily and said, I don't want to go home. I want to follow you. Besides, you said on the way that you have a lot of good-looking people there. I can go and have a look. Xianyuan Mose saw that Fengjiu didn't dislike the chubby girl, so he didn't push her away. Instead, he let her go to Fengjiu's side and waited for her to deal with the matter herself. After Hui Lang heard the chubby girl's words, his expression couldn't help but become strange. He looked at the chubby girl, then looked at Fengjiu, and then lowered his head to look at himself. It's over. This ghost doctor wants to matchmake this chubby girl? Although he wasn't as handsome as his master, he wasn't bad either. If this chubby girl took a fancy to him, would he be forcefully sent to her by the ghost doctor? Thinking of this, he moved his feet and quietly retreated outside. Regardless of anything else, it was better for him to hide first. Otherwise, if she really took a fancy to him, he would cry but have no tears. When the Nalan family head heard this, he was also startled. Then, he shook his head and smiled. This Yang family's second miss really dared to say anything. Chapter 1926. Really? That's great. The fat girl excitedly hugged Fengjiu's arm and cheered. Xianyuan Mose's eyebrows jumped, and he glanced at her with a dark expression. Let go. Fengjiu didn't say anything, but he couldn't help but shout. When the fat girl heard this voice, she instinctively let go of Fengjiu's arm and stood to the side. She couldn't help it. That person's face was dark, and his aura was very scary. She was scared just by looking at him. Let's go. Xianyuan Mose said to Fengjiu and let her out. Wait. She smiled slightly and looked at Nalan family head. Nalan family head, can I borrow a room? Let me change my clothes? She went out with this appearance. Even if she didn't care, she couldn't ignore Mose's face. Of course. Nalan family head smiled, and called the people outside to take Fengjiu to the guest room. Xianyuan Mose wanted to stop her, but seeing her look, he didn't say anything and let her go. When Fengjiu appeared in front of everyone in a simple but dazzling red dress, Xianyuan Mose and Hui Lang, who were used to her appearance, quietly admired her. Nayland family head's eyes flashed with amazement and surprise. He didn't expect that in less than half an incense stick's time, she seemed to have changed into a different person. Moreover, she was such a beautiful woman. Seeing Fengjiu at this moment, he finally knew why the information he had collected at that time described this woman as a peerless beauty. Her appearance and temperament were indeed unmatched and stunning. The plump lass was overjoyed when she saw this and couldn't help but pinch her round waist. What she saw was her slender waist after changing into women's clothing. Her waist was so thin that it would take two of them together to fit her round waist. She didn't think that she was fat before, and she never envied the waists of her sisters at home. But now, looking at her fleshy waist, she suddenly felt inferior. "Let's go," Fengjiu said to them. After bidding farewell to the Nayland family head, he held Xianyuan Mo's hand and left. He couldn't help but sigh as he watched the man and woman leave. They were so outstanding and matched so well. He had originally thought that his eldest son wouldn't have a chance. However, it seemed that this was a case of mutual affection. It seemed that his son wouldn't have a chance. Oh right. Why hadn't his youngest son returned after so long? Don't tell me I'm trapped in that formation again? Thinking of him, he hurriedly shouted, "Men! Someone come quickly! Go and see if the second young master is." Before he could finish his words, he flicked his sleeves and hurriedly walked out. "Forget it, I'll make a trip myself." In the backyard of Emo Chen's courtyard, Emo Chen was lying on a soft couch and reading a book. He knew that someone had broken into the outer courtyard's formation, but he didn't pay attention to it. His younger brother and younger sister ran to him every 2 to 3 days. He really didn't have the energy to deal with them. Therefore, he set up a soundproof barrier while setting up the formation. He also changed the formation so that it wouldn't hurt people. It would only trap people inside and couldn't get out. No matter how they shouted inside, he wouldn't hear them here. He was happy with the peace and quiet. Chapter 1927. Fengjiu, who had just left the Nayland residence, suddenly stopped and turned around to look at the chubby girl behind her. "Xiao if you follow me back, won't your father be anxious to find you?" "It's okay, I'm sure I'll meet my family members on the way. I'll let them go back and inform them." She smiled with a pair of crescent moon-like eyes as she looked around the street. Seeing this, Fengjiu sighed softly and said to Hui Lang behind him, "You go and tell the Nayland residents to pass a message to the Yang residents." "Yes." Hui Lang responded and quickly walked back. "Master!" Several voices filled with surprise sounded. Fengjiu looked forward and saw Du Fan, Ling Shuang and the others quickly walking over. Seeing them, she smiled and said, "It's you guys. Master, we heard that you've arrived. We looked around the street but couldn't find you, so we came to the Nayland residence. You really are here," Du Fan said and bowed to Xianyuan Mo's. "Yama Lord." Xianyuan Mo's nodded slightly and said to Fengjiu, "Let's go back first." Yes, master, let's go back first." "Okay." Fengjiu responded with a smile and walked forward with them. The chubby girl behind her curiously looked at the three people. She saw that one of them was wearing a crescent moon-like robe and holding a fan in his hand. His appearance was not bad, but if we were to talk about handsomeness, the young man next to him was more handsome. The young man was wearing a simple white robe with a jade pendant tied to his waist. His whole body was simple, but he gave off a very gentle and comfortable feeling. Moreover, he was very good-looking. She smiled and stared at the good-looking and gentle young man. The young man seemed to be aware that she was looking at him and turned around to look at her, revealing a smile to her. Suddenly, she felt her heart beat wildly and her cheeks became hot. She lowered her head in embarrassment, but couldn't help but sneak a glance from the corner of her eyes. Ling Shuang, who was wearing a black robe, glanced at the chubby girl behind him, and his eyes moved slightly. Wasn't this the second young miss of the Yang residence? Master, we bought a large residence in the western part of the city. The courtyard inside is quite big. Now that everyone has settled down there, we haven't been idle during this period of time. Other than cultivating, we have also been spreading our influence. Du Fan said to Fengjiu while pointing in front of them, we're almost there. After walking through the main street, we'll be there. That area isn't the center of the city, and it's quite quiet. It's also a more expensive area, so there aren't many idle people walking around. Did you choose this place yourselves? Or did Mo-chun help you choose it? She looked at them and asked. Yes, we chose it ourselves. Leng Hua said gently. Our Nalan residence has been here for a few days, so we've been walking around and asking around. In the end, we saw that this residence was not bad and bought it. Fengjiu nodded and looked at Xianyuan Mose. What about you? Are you also here? Xianyuan Mose glanced at her, then slowly spoke in a deep and magnetic voice. I bought the house next to yours and got them to open the door. Oh? You bought it with money? She raised her eyebrows. She didn't think that there would be 2 empty residences in this area. Chapter 1928. Hearing this, Fengjiu finally understood. So she had used pills to exchange for it. That was normal. After all, in this kind of place, money might not be able to buy what one wanted. However, pills were different. Let's go. Let's go home. She smiled slightly and held his hand as they walked forward. Not long after, they saw 2 neighboring residences. The 2 residences were connected together and took up a large area. One of the residences had the 2 words, Feng Residence, written on it, while the other had the words, Ling Residence, written on it. Ling Residence? Fengjiu was slightly surprised and looked at Xianyuan Mose beside him. He never thought that he would use the name Ling Mohun to set up a residence here. It's just a name. Let's go. He led her towards the Feng residence. Du Fan and the others opened the door first. Once they entered, Fengjiu saw that there were arrays set up in the residence. Furthermore, it was Du Fan's work. Looking at the arrays, she nodded to herself. After not seeing them for a long time, it seemed that Du Fan's arrays had improved. Yang Xiao-er, who was following behind them, did not see it. She only followed them and occasionally looked at the gentle youth. The more she looked, the more she felt that this youth was good-looking. This subordinate greets master. The sudden sound caused Yang Xiao-er to come back to her senses. She looked forward and saw 8 handsome men standing in front of her and bowing to Fengjiu. Looking at the 8 people's handsome and outstanding appearances, she could not help but think in a daze. So there really are a lot of good-looking men here. Let's go in and talk. Fengjiu indicated. After entering, he paused and glanced at Yang Xiao-er, who had been looking at the Leng Hua, and could not help but smile. Xiao-er. Yang Xiao-er came back to her senses and looked at Fengjiu. What is it? The Feng Wei and the others looked at the fat girl and thought, where did master bring such a fat girl back? Who do you think is the most good-looking person here? She looked at her with a teasing smile. Yang Xiao-er glanced at the crowd in embarrassment. She lowered her head and played with her fingers. She said softly, they're all good-looking. At least, the people here were better looking than the pretty boy from the Yuan family that she had seen before. I see. Fengjiu's eyes flickered, and he asked with a smile, then, pick one from here to accompany you around the residence. Who do you think is the best companion? Hearing this, the 8 Phoenix guards were stunned. What did this mean? This. Yang Xiao-er hesitated for a moment. His gaze swept across the crowd, and he took small steps to Ling Hua's side. Him. Ling Hua's face still had a gentle expression, but a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He then smiled and said, That's good. Master, I'll show Miss Yang around the house and have the kitchen prepare some food. As he spoke, he said to Yang Xiao-er, Miss Yang, this way please. Yang Xiao-er was happy and a little shy. She said softly, You can call me Xiao or there's no need to call me Miss Yang. It's too formal. When the people behind heard this, their expressions became strange, especially the 8 Phoenix Guards. They looked at Ling Hua and Yang Xiao with strange expressions. They could even faintly hear the two of them talking. Is that so? All right then. Miss Xiao, are you hungry? Why don't I take you to the kitchen to get some snacks first, and then we'll walk around the garden. Chapter 1929. Feng Wei and the others told Feng Zhou about their operation here. After reporting everything, they asked, Master, was it you who brought people to destroy the headquarters of the Dark Knight Temple? That's right. Feng Zhou smiled and nodded. After I helped Murong Yishuan's master treat, I left the Huaxian sect and snuck into their training base. The people of the Dark Knight Temple used drugs to control those who were captured and wanted to train them into spies to infiltrate the 4 great immortal sects. I beat them at their own game and helped train those people to increase their strength. In the end, I gathered them under my command and brought them to destroy the headquarters of the Dark Knight Temple. After the matter was settled, I let them disperse and called them out when I needed them in the future. Everyone listened to her speak casually and explained the matter simply in a few sentences. However, they knew that it probably wasn't that easy for her inside. The Dark Knight Temple was a large force here and there must be layers of checkpoints inside. She was able to destroy the headquarters of the Dark Knight Temple probably because the other party underestimated the enemy. By the way, I also discovered something in there. When she said this, she looked at Xianyuan Mo's, who was beside her. Seeing her look, Xianyuan Mo's eyes moved slightly and asked, What is it? I saw Han Rong there. She spoke, her voice slightly heavy. However, he is now a subordinate of the Demon Lord. He has taken over a body and entered the demon path. Moreover, whether it is my Phoenix dynasty or Xianyuan Empire, everything that happened a while ago was instigated by him. Han Rong? Xianyuan Mo's eyes darkened and his face turned cold. I didn't expect him to still be alive. He should have disregarded their old friendship and killed him with one strike. I don't know how he found a spirit stone mine, but he used it as a price to ask the Temple of Darkness to help him. Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to kill him when he was inside. A murderous look flashed across her eyes, and her voice became cold. Master, don't worry. As long as we know who did it, we will definitely be able to find him, Feng Wei and the others said. Feng Zhou nodded and said, I'll draw his current appearance later. When the time comes, tell your subordinates to pay more attention. The 8 Phoenix Guards looked at each other and said, Master, there's one more thing we need to tell you. Feng Zhou looked at them and waited for them to continue. Half a month ago, we received news from the family head. They have already left the valley with the Phoenix Guards and returned to the Phoenix dynasty. They said that although the imperial palace is gone, their home is still there. Their ancestors have lived there for generations. They plan to rebuild the Feng Manor and take root there. Speaking to this point, Luo Yu paused for a moment, then said, The family head and master said that even if they want to avoid the world, they cannot avoid it forever. If those people dare to offend them again, they will fight it out with them. This time, they must protect the Feng Manor well and will not allow anyone to destroy it. Hearing this, Feng Zhou was slightly taken aback. He had an indescribable feeling in his heart. That's right. Their ancestors had lived there for generations. How could they just abandon it like that? No matter how strong the enemy was, no matter how afraid they were of being injured, could they just keep avoiding it? They couldn't. Not only would she not avoid it, but they also wouldn't. Chapter 1930. With their current abilities and the destruction of dynasty, it was believed that they would become even more powerful. It was important for a person to be strong, but the strength of their heart was also an important factor. As long as they had the heart and the homeland they wanted to protect, they would gradually become so strong that their enemies would fear them. I've already sent people to keep an eye on the Devil Hall and the Temple of Darkness. They shouldn't make a move against them for the time being. Xianyuan Mo said as he looked at Fengjiu, "You've been quiet for a while. In the following time, it's best to stabilize your footing here as soon as possible and push the name of the ghost doctor to the peak." His voice paused for a moment before he continued, "Although we cultivators don't have as short a lifespan as mortals, many cultivators are more afraid of death than mortals. They are more worried that they won't live long. Whether it is your medical skills, your cultivation in alchemy, or your talent in alchemy, as long as you use them well, you can naturally reach heights that others can't reach." Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed and he said, "Since that's the case, let's do our old business." Hearing her words, the corners of Xianyuan Mo's lips curled up slightly and he didn't say anything else. Feng Wei, Du Fan and the others were thinking, old business? What's Master's old business? Medical skills? Or pills? Or medicine? Let's stop here for today. We'll talk about the rest in 2 days. Fengjiu said as he held Xianyuan Mo's hand, "Let's take a walk in the backyard and see if the dishes are ready in the kitchen." When the others saw this, they grinned and didn't follow. However, just as Xianyuan Mo followed Fengjiu with a smile in his eyes, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. "Du Fan." Fengjiu turned around and called out, "Master." Du Fan stepped forward and smiled, "There's no need to count us in on the drinking. You and the Yama Lord can have a good gathering." Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled, "Of course. I know that even without you saying it." As he spoke, he took out the ancient formation book from the space and handed it to him. "This is an ancient formation book I obtained outside. Study it well." Du Fan took the ancient book on array formations and flipped it open with some surprise. He happily expressed his thanks. "Thank you, Master." "Master, if Du Fan has a gift, then do we have one?" Luo Yu grinned as he stepped forward and asked. The other Phoenix guards stood at the side and watched with smiles on their faces. "Of course I do." Fengjiu smiled and said, "These are all treasures that I obtained outside. I'll bring them to you tomorrow." "Thank you, Master." Everyone thanked him happily. Fengjiu shook his head and walked out with Xianyuan Mo. In the large house, all they could see was exquisite scenery. The two of them walked slowly with their fingers interlocked. After walking for a while, the two of them didn't say anything. They just quietly enjoyed this moment of peace. "Do you like it here?" Xianyuan Mo asked as he stopped in the middle of a flower bush. "Yes, it's very good here. I can see that they spent a lot of effort decorating it." She leaned on his shoulder and hugged him with one hand around his waist. "Zay, when we get married in the future, let's decorate and design our own home." Chapter 1931. Fengjiu's eyes flickered. "Definitely not now. I haven't gained a firm foothold here, and my father and the others have just returned to the Phoenix dynasty. How about this? Once they've restarted everything and built their home, we'll talk about marriage." "That works too." As the two of them spoke, they could vaguely hear voices coming their way. They exchanged glances, then looked in the direction of the voices. They saw the chubby girl walking towards them with Linghua. "Big brother Linghua, then can I still come and find you in the future?" No, can I come and find big sister Feng?" "Since Master brought you here, he naturally allowed it. You can come over if you have time in the future," Linghua said gently. He looked ahead and said, "But sometimes we're a little busy here. I'm afraid there will be places where we won't be able to greet you." "It's fine. I'll treat this place as my own home. You don't have to greet me. If you're busy, I can even help," Yang Xiao hurriedly said. Linghua smiled when he heard this. He looked ahead and said, "Master and the others are in front." Yang Xiao looked ahead and saw two people standing not too far away, looking at her. She immediately ran over, but as she ran, the ground began to emit heavy thumping sounds. Big Sister Feng. She walked around with Leng Hua. Not only did she familiarize herself with the house, she also found out that his name was Fengjiu. How was it? Did you have fun here? Fengjiu asked with a smile. Her gaze landed on Yang Xiao'er's rosy, round face. Yes, yes. She nodded heavily and said happily, Big brother Ling Hua treats me very well. He brought me to the kitchen to get some pastries and some things I haven't eaten before. He even brought me around. Big Sister Feng, can I really come back to play in the future? I really like it here. Of course. This is my house. You live in this city too. If you want to play in the future, you can come over. Fengjiu said with a smile. Although I sent someone to inform your father, you still have to go home today. You can't stay here for too long, otherwise your family will be worried. Okay. She answered straightforwardly. Then I'll go back now and come back tomorrow morning. Hearing this, Fengjiu's mouth twitched. In the end, he could only smile helplessly and look at Ling Hua. Let her stay for dinner tonight. After dinner, send her back. Yes, Ling Hua replied warmly, then said to Yang Xiao'er, Miss Xiao'er, let's go to the front. I'll introduce you to the others. Introduce me to other people? Okay. She nodded happily and said to Fengjiu, Sister Feng, we'll go to the front. See you at dinner tonight. Ling Hua nodded at Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose, then led her to the front. Seeing the two of them leave, Fengjiu smiled. This little girl is interesting, isn't she? I don't think so, Xianyuan Mose said indifferently, not even looking in her direction. In his eyes, no one could attract his attention more than she, who was by his side. On the other side, in the Yang residence, the Yang family head, who had lost his daughter because he was looking for her, anxiously paced back and forth in the hall after returning home, looking outside from time to time. He had been back for a while, but his daughter hadn't returned. Where had she run off to? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.